Not every motorcycle from the 1960s deserves a comeback. Some were unreliable, some were overrated, and some tried so hard they forgot how to actually run. But a handful of those bikes didn't just define an era, they rewrote what riding meant. The 1960s were chaos on two wheels. Factories were experimenting with everything: inline fours, triples, two-strokes, Desmo valves, and somehow, most of it actually worked. It was a decade when engineers took risks, riders took chances, and speed stopped being a number and became an obsession. Half a century later, those same machines still haunt modern bikes. They had less tech, less safety, and somehow more soul. You didn't just ride them, you wrestled them, trusted them, and sometimes feared them. So today, we're looking back at the best of the best. 15 motorcycles from the 1960s that could still destroy half the showroom today if someone had the guts to build them again. Brace yourself, this list is fast, loud, and guaranteed to start an argument. Number 15. Harley-Davidson XLCH Sportster. Before cruiser was even a word, the Harley-Davidson XLCH Sportster was already rewriting what American muscle looked like on two wheels. This bike didn't whisper power, it shouted it through open pipes and shook the ground beneath it. With its 883cc V-twin pushing out 55 horsepower and a top speed flirting with 100 miles per hour, the XLCH was built for anyone who thought rules were optional. It wasn't refined, it wasn't polite, and that was exactly the point. It vibrated like an angry washing machine, leaked oil like a bad habit, and punished anyone who tried to tame it. But every time you kicked it to life, that engine barked back with attitude, and you knew you were riding something alive. Modern Harleys might have comfort, electronics, and cruise control, but they don't have that raw mechanical heartbeat. The sound that made you grin even when it tried to throw you off. Bring this machine back with modern metallurgy and brakes, and it would turn heads all over again. If you're enjoying this ride through motorcycle history, kindly like the video and hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty more legends coming your way. And trust me, the next one's going to make you rethink what a superbike really is. Number 14. Honda CB750. The bike that changed motorcycling forever wasn't born in a lab or built for luxury. It was built to prove that reliability and performance could live in the same machine. When Honda unveiled the CB750 in 1969, it didn't just enter the superbike era, it created it. 4 cylinders, an overhead cam, electric start, front disc brake, features that made everything else on the road look prehistoric overnight. Riders who have spent years babying their British twins suddenly realized they could have smooth power, clean shifts, and an engine that didn't leak more oil than it burned. The CB750 wasn't just fast, it was civilized speed. It made 67 horsepower, pulled clean from idle, and ran like a sewing machine even after hours of hard riding. It was proof that performance didn't have to be punishment. Sure, some said it was too refined, too sterile, but that's because it was perfect. This was the moment Japan stopped chasing the West and started leading it. The CB750 wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a revolution on two wheels. Number 13. Kawasaki H1 Mach III. If the Honda CB750 was reason and refinement, the Kawasaki H1 Mach III was chaos in a gas tank. Released the same year, it couldn't have been more different. Where Honda built a masterpiece of balance, Kawasaki built a weapon. The H1's 500cc two-stroke triple made around 60 horsepower, absurd for its size and time, and hit the quarter mile in under 13 seconds. It didn't purr or glide, it detonated forward like it was allergic to moderation. Riders called it the Widowmaker, and not as a joke. The handling was sketchy, the frame flexed, and the brakes were wishful thinking at best. But none of that mattered, because twisting that throttle was pure adrenaline. It demanded respect, punished mistakes, and rewarded bravery. The H1 wasn't trying to be perfect, it was trying to be alive. If Kawasaki ever brought it back with modern suspension and brakes, it would still scare riders in all the right ways. Dangerous? Absolutely. But boring? Never. Number 12. Norton Commando 750. By the late 60s, the British motorcycle industry was on shaky ground, but the Norton Commando was proof they still knew how to build a world-class machine. It took everything riders loved about classic British twins, sound, character, and torque, and finally solved the part everyone hated: vibration. Norton's engineers pulled off something brilliant in their new isoelastic mounting system, separating the engine from the frame so it could shake without shaking you. The result was a 750cc parallel twin that felt smooth, fast, and far more refined than anything else coming out of England at the time. It made close to 60 horsepower and handled like a dream, with steering so precise riders swore it read their minds. The design was pure class, sleek, balanced, unmistakably British. Sure, reliability could be hit or miss, but when it worked, it was magic. The Commando wasn't just a motorcycle, it was the last great stand of British engineering before the Japanese invasion changed everything. Number 11. Suzuki T20 Super 6. Before the world started obsessing over big displacement and endless horsepower, Suzuki showed that clever engineering could embarrass engines twice the size. The 1965 T20 Super 6 was a 250cc two-stroke twin that packed a serious punch. About 29 horsepower, but more importantly, a 6-speed gearbox when everyone else was stuck with 4 or 5. The transmission was its secret weapon. It kept the rev-happy motor in its narrow power band, letting riders wring every ounce of performance from the little engine. The T20 wasn't about brute force, it was about rhythm. Keeping it in tune, dancing through the close ratio gears, and feeling that light chassis float through corners was its own reward. It could hit nearly 100 miles per hour, but what mattered more was how alive it felt getting there. Where other small bikes felt like transportation, the T20 felt like rebellion, sharp, mechanical, and full of mischief. A modern version with cleaner emissions and today's materials could easily remind riders that small doesn't have to mean slow. Number 10. Triumph Bonneville T120. If there's one motorcycle that defined cool in the 1960s, it's the Triumph Bonneville T120. It wasn't just a machine, it was a fashion statement, a soundtrack, and a symbol of rebellion all rolled into one. Named after the Bonneville salt flats, it delivered around 46 horsepower from its 650cc parallel twin, but the real magic wasn't in the numbers, it was in the feel. The engine thumped with perfect rhythm, the exhaust crackled like applesauce, and the lines of the tank in chrome could stop traffic without even moving. The Bonneville handled beautifully for its time too. Quick steering, lightweight, and a low stance that begged to be ridden hard. Sure, it leaked a little oil, and the electrics had the personality of a moody teenager, but that was part of its charm. The T120 was attitude on two wheels. Bring it back with modern reliability and that same timeless silhouette, and it would sell out overnight. If you're still with me, you're one of the real riders, the kind who understands why these old machines still matter. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. Because the next bike, it didn't just make history, it rewrote it. Number 9. Yamaha DT1. In 1968, Yamaha did something no one else had the guts or imagination to try. They built a bike that didn't care whether the road was paved or not. The DT1 was the world's first true dual sport, a machine that could commute Monday through Friday and then spend the weekend climbing mountains. Under the tank was a 250cc two-stroke single that just made 20 horsepower. But it only had to move 250 pounds of pure freedom. It wasn't the fastest or the flashiest, but it changed what a motorcycle could be. Before the DT1, you either bought a street bike or a dirt bike. Yamaha said, why not both? And kicked off a whole new category of riding. That simple idea evolved into the modern adventure bike, just a lot heavier and more complicated. The DT1 was light, affordable, and fearless. Bring it back today with a little more suspension travel and fuel injection, and it would remind everyone that simplicity is still the best kind of adventure. Number 8. Triumph's Trident T150. By the time the late 60s rolled around, the British motorcycle industry knew Japan was closing in fast. Triumph's answer was the Trident T150, a 740cc triple that proved they still had plenty of fight left. It made about 58 horsepower, revved smooth and strong, and had a sound that could make a grown man grin under his helmet. The Trident was the bridge between the old-school thump of British twins and the high-revving future that was about to arrive. It wasn't perfect, the styling was dated even when it launched, and it hit showrooms just as the Honda CB750 came along and stole the spotlight. But from a riding standpoint, the Trident was magic. Linear power, great mid-range, and a buttery gearbox that begged to be worked. It was quick, civilized, and genuinely exciting to ride. If Triumph had built this bike a year or two sooner, the whole story of motorcycling might have played out differently. Number 7. BSA A65 Lightning. The BSA A65 Lightning was Britain's attempt to prove they could build a muscle bike just as wild as anything coming out of America. And for a while, they nailed it. With its 650cc parallel twin cranking out roughly 50 horsepower, the Lightning had serious punch for its day. enough to go head-to-head with Harley's Sportster and Triumph's Bonnevilles. It wasn't subtle either. The chrome, the stance, the name, it all screamed speed and swagger. But what really gave the Lightning its personality was how alive it felt. It vibrated, growled, and made you work for every smooth shift. The gearbox demanded finesse, and the Kickstarter could bite back if you weren't paying attention. Yet that was the charm. It wasn't a motorcycle you just rode, it was one you earned. The A65 was raw, loud, and unpredictable, and that's exactly what made it thrilling. Give it modern ignition, proper wiring, and better materials, and the Lightning would still strike fear into anything that lined up next to it. Number 6. BMW R69S. If the BSA Lightning was a bar fight in chrome, the BMW R69S was a tuxedo with a throttle. This wasn't a bike built to impress at the café. It was engineered to cross countries. Its 594cc boxer twin made around 42 horsepower, but numbers don't really tell the story here. What made the R69S legendary was its precision. The shaft drive, the smooth power delivery, the balance, it felt carved from solid metal. You could cruise at 90 miles per hour all day, and the bike wouldn't even flinch. It was expensive, sure, but it delivered a level of refinement that no other manufacturer could touch. Where British bikes rattled and leaked, the BMW hummed. It was a quiet professional in a room full of loud personalities, and it set the blueprint for every sport touring machine that followed. Bring it back with ABS, heated grips, and a few more horses, and it would still be the gentleman's choice for serious miles. Number 5. Ducati 350 Mach III. Before Ducati became synonymous with big-bore superbikes and trellis frames, it earned its reputation building small displacement machines that punched far above their weight. The 1969 Ducati 350 Mach III was one of those bikes, a featherweight racer for the street that proved finesse could outshine brute power. Its 340cc single-cylinder engine made around 36 horsepower and revved to 8,500 RPM, thanks to Ducati's now famous desmodromic valve system. It was sharp, precise, and built with the same obsession for engineering detail that would later define the brand. At barely 280 pounds, the Mach III wasn't about speed, it was about sensation. Every shift, every lean, every throttle input felt direct and alive. It wasn't forgiving, but it was intoxicating. The sound from that little single was pure mechanical opera. If Ducati resurrected it today, with fuel injection, better suspension, and the same classic silhouette, it'd be the ultimate proof that light, simple, and soulful still beat electronic and complicated. Number 4. Royal Enfield Interceptor. The Royal Enfield Interceptor was the unsung hero of the 1960s, proof that performance didn't have to come wrapped in polish or pedigree. While the British industry was busy fighting over tradition, Enfield quietly built one of the fastest parallel twins of its time. The 750cc Interceptor made around 52 horsepower and could cruise comfortably at 100 miles per hour, a rare feat back then. It wasn't a showpiece, it was a street brawler in shiny metal. What made the Interceptor special was how honest it felt. It didn't have the refinement of a Triumph or the prestige of a Norton, but twist the throttle and it came alive with a deep, throaty growl that sounded like rebellion. It had torque for days and a power band that pulled hard without complaint. Sure, reliability could be hit or miss, but when you got a good one, you never wanted to let it go. Reborn today with modern reliability, the Interceptor could remind everyone why motorcycles were meant to be ridden, not parked. Number 3. Bultaco Metralla 250. Spain isn't the first country most riders think of when it comes to iconic motorcycles, but the Bultaco Metralla 250 changed that in a heartbeat. Released in the late 60s, it was one of the lightest, sharpest, and most responsive bikes of its time. The 250cc two-stroke single made around 27 horsepower and weighed just over 240 pounds. Numbers that don't sound huge until you realize how explosive that combination felt on a twisty road. It didn't just handle corners, it attacked them. The Metralla was the definition of purity. No excess, no distractions, just you, the throttle, and a chassis that seemed to read your thoughts. Every ride felt like a conversation between man and machine, and that's something modern bikes often miss. It was the kind of motorcycle that made average riders feel talented and good riders feel unstoppable. Bring it back today with better brakes and cleaner emissions, and it would still be a masterclass in simplicity done right. Number 2. Ducati 250 Mach 1. If the Bultaco Metralla was pure instinct, the Ducati 250 Mach 1 was precision refined into art. This little Italian single looked delicate, but it was an absolute firecracker. Launched in 1964, it produced around 28 horsepower from just 248cc, making it one of the fastest quarter-liter bikes of its era, capable of nearly 100 miles per hour. It was also the first production bike to use Ducati's racing technology in a street machine, giving regular riders a taste of what the factory racers were feeling on track. What set the Mach 1 apart wasn't just its speed, but how complete it felt. The riding position was aggressive yet natural, the controls tight and mechanical, and the engine sang with that distinctive Desmo rhythm. It was small but sophisticated, confident without being loud. In a world obsessed with displacement, the Mach 1 proved that balance and craftsmanship could win just as many hearts as horsepower. Even today, few bikes capture that perfect mix of beauty and bite. Number 1. MV Agusta 750 Sport Prototype. When the conversation turns to perfection on two wheels, every road eventually leads to MV Agusta. The 750 Sport Prototype was Italy's engineering masterpiece, a bike that looked like it belonged in a museum, but sounded like it was built for war. Developed in the mid-1960s, it carried the DNA of MV's World Championship winning race machine straight into the hands of civilians. Its inline-4 engine, fed by a quartet of carburetors, delivered around 70 horsepower, an astonishing figure for its day, and the sound it made at full tilt was pure symphony. But the MV wasn't about numbers, it was about craftsmanship. Every weld, every casting, every line on the tank was shaped by people who saw motorcycles as art. Riding one felt like borrowing something sacred. It was fast, exotic, and completely unapologetic about either. If MV ever brought this bike back with modern tech under that same sculpted frame, it wouldn't just compete with modern superbikes, it would humble them. And that's our ride through the greatest machines of the 1960s. 15 motorcycles that proved innovation doesn't need electronics, and character never goes out of style. Some were wild, some refined, but all of them defined what real motorcycling feels like. Which one would you bring back first? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, subscribe and like the video, because we've got plenty more legends coming your way. Until next time, keep it upright, keep it loud, and keep riding.